And then the fifth, they do not find what they have put away. That means they are careless lah. They simply they don't look after their things properly. This one, a lot of people sometimes are very careless lah. Sometimes you think we have a lot of things simply can throw away lah. But actually it's not good lah. Then another one, mismanaged undertakings fail. That means you do something and like business, business fails, or you plant crops and the crops fail, or whatever. Or there arises within a family a wastrel who squanders, dissipates and fritters away his wealth. That means one of the family members is a squanderer, squanders away the property that was hard earned. So in any organization also you have like this. Even in the monastery as well, we have to be careful. Sometimes some people stay in the monastery and especially monks because monks sometimes they think everything belongs to the Sangha. Sometimes they can waste things. They forget that the Sangha things are meant for the Sangha of the future. And then impermanence. Impermanence is, they say, the wealthy family usually doesn't go past 3 generations or something. Unless the family is very careful, then otherwise the wealth cannot continue in the family. So these are the 8 causes for the destruction of families. How families can come to ruin. So you have a family man, you take note of this. Now the next sutta is 42.10. I just mentioned one other thing. I see in this sutta, because of jealousy, this Niganta Nataputta tried to slander the Buddha, and sometimes for other reasons. Sometimes even within our Buddhist religion, sometimes some people don't like a particular monk because he teaches different from what they are accustomed to hear. So sometimes for that reason they don't like him. Sometimes they can slander him, but they don't understand the karma is very bad. Now Sutta 42.10. On one occasion, the Blessed One was dwelling at Rajagaha in the bamboo grove, the squirrel sanctuary. Now on that occasion, the members of the king's retinue had assembled in the royal palace and were sitting together when the following conversation arose. Gold and silver represents money. Gold and silver are allowable for the ascetics following the Sakyan sun. The ascetics following the Sakyan sun consent to gold and silver. The ascetics following the Sakyan sun accept gold and silver. Now on that occasion, Mani Chulaka, the head man, was sitting in that assembly. Then Mani Chulaka, the head man, said to that assembly, "Do not speak thus, masters. Gold and silver are not allowable for the ascetics following the Sakyan sun. The ascetics following the Sakyan sun do not consent to gold and silver. The ascetics following the Sakyan sun do not accept gold and silver. They have renounced jewelry and gold. They have given up the use of gold and silver." And Mani Chulaka was able to convince that assembly. Stop here for a moment. So here, some of these people were saying that Buddhist monks are allowed to accept money. Why they say this? Because there were some rotten monks, even during the Buddha's time, who accepted money, who did not keep the precepts properly. Just as now, there are even much more monks who don't behave according to the precepts. But sometimes people misunderstand. They think the precept forbids a monk from touching money. That's not true. That is a misinterpretation by some monks purposely. The exact interpretation after you see, according to this sutta, is that a monk is not allowed to possess money, because if a monk possesses money, he can use the money in whichever way he likes. And if he uses the money to enjoy himself, then he's not of the nature of a monk, stated here. So in the monk's precepts, sometimes a monk is required to touch money or to touch valuable things. For example, in the monk's precepts, if a lay person comes to the monastery and he left the purse with a lot of money in it and went home. So if a monk sees that, he is supposed, according to the precept, he's required to take that purse and keep it for safekeeping. Keep it for safekeeping, and then another day when that person returns to the monastery, he's supposed to hand it over to that person. So in the same way, if a monk goes to a lay person's house for dana or something, and then that lay person offers the food, and then in a hurry to do something, that lay person leaves the house, then the monk finishes his food, then he finds that the lay person maybe left a valuable diamond ring or something on the table, or a lot of money and the purse or something on the couch or something, and if the monk goes away and the house is not locked, that valuable object may get lost. So the monk is required to take that valuable object and keep it in safekeeping to return to the owner. So even in the precepts, the monk is required to do that. So a lot of people have the wrong impression that the monk is not supposed to touch the money. So why some monks interpret it in this way? Because they like to possess money. So when they possess money, like recently somebody told me about some nun. She got money in a purse, in a bag. And then she wanted to use the money. She asked the lay person to take the money from the bag and to do some charity or buy something or other. So she thinks as long as she doesn't touch the money, there's nothing wrong. That's not correct. The real thing is that you're not allowed to possess the money. So whatever money is given, say to the monastery, is not considered as belonging to the monk. It's for the use of the sangha. It's for the use of the sangha in the present and the future. So if it is not used, it's supposed to be given back to the donors. So the monks can use the money, but they cannot at any time consider the money to be theirs. Because if the money is considered to be theirs, they can use it in any way they want. But if the money is not theirs, it's only for them to use when they require according to certain limits. That means only they can use the money only for allowable items. They cannot use it for luxurious items. So it's all very well spelled out in the Vinaya, monastic discipline. So in this case, even during the Buddha's time, some monks were accepting money. That's why these people were talking that surely the Buddha allowed these monks to accept. And this Mani Chulaka is more familiar with the Buddha. Then he told them, actually it's not allowed according to the precepts. And was able to convince them. Then Mani Chulaka approached the Blessed One, paid homage to him and sat down to one side. Sitting to one side, he reported to the Blessed One all that had happened, adding, I hope, Venerable Sir, that when I answered thus, I stated what has been said by the Blessed One, and did not misrepresent him with what is contrary to fact, that I explained in accordance with the Dhamma, and that no reasonable consequences of my statement gives rise for criticism. And the Buddha said, for sure, head man, when you answered thus, you stated what has been said by me, and did not misrepresent me with what is contrary to fact. You explained in accordance with the Dhamma, and no reasonable consequence of your statement gives ground for criticism. For headmen, gold and silver are not allowable for the ascetics following the Sakyan Sun. The ascetics following the Sakyan Sun do not consent to gold and silver. The ascetics following the Sakyan Sun do not accept gold and silver. They have renounced jewelry and gold. They have given up the use of gold and silver. If gold and silver are allowable for anyone, the 5 chords of sensual pleasure are allowable for him. If the 5 chords of sensual pleasure are allowable for anyone, you can definitely consider him to be one who does not have the character of an ascetic or of a follower of the Sakin sun. Further, headman, I say this: straw may be sought by one needing straw. Timber may be sought by one needing timber. A cart can be sought by one needing a cart. A workman may be sought by one needing a workman. But I do not say that there is any method by which gold and silver may be consented to or sought. That's the end of the sutta. So here the Buddha says his disciples have given up money, given up jewelry and property. And here he states very clearly why he does not allow monks to possess money. He says if monks are allowed money, then they can use it to enjoy the 5 chords of sensual pleasure, to buy whatever they like to enjoy. And if they enjoy worldly pleasures, then they are definitely not of the character, of the nature of Buddhist monk. Sakin son is Sakyaputta, not the follower of the Buddha. Then the Buddha says a monk is allowed to look for straw, to look for timber, to look for cart, to look for workmen, but there is no way by which a monk may be allowed to look for money. So that's why it's not allowed for a monk to try to raise funds and all that. So we try in as far as we can not to do anything to raise funds. If people give, then we use. Like when we started, we also lay quite low. So initially we had difficulties. But slowly, as we do our work, gradually the support comes naturally. You don't have to look for money. You just do the right thing, and your karma will give you the blessings. The next sutta, 42.11. So you see this this sutta spells out exactly why money is not allowed for a monk. So here he says, if money is allowed to a monk, then he can enjoy worldly pleasures. In other words, when you say it's allowed, that means a monk is not allowed to possess money. Not allowed to possess money. If he considers the money as monastery money, then he cannot simply use as he like. There are rules for using the money. The next sutta, 42.11. Bhadraka. This word sometimes Bhadragaka. In the Pali Text Society book, it's called Bhadragaka. On one occasion, the Blessed One was dwelling at a town of the Malans named Uruvela Kappa. Then Bhadraka, the headman, approached the Blessed One, paid homage to him, sat down to one side and said, "It would be good, Venerable Sir, if the Blessed One would teach me about the origin and the passing away of suffering." And the Buddha said, "If headman, I were to teach you about the origin and the passing away of suffering with reference to the past, saying, so it was in the past, perplexity and uncertainty about that might arise in you. And if I were to teach you about the origin and the passing away of suffering with reference to the future, saying, so it will be in the future, perplexity and uncertainty about that might arise in you. Instead, headman, while I am sitting right here and you are sitting right here, I will teach you about the origin and the passing away of suffering. Listen to that and attend closely. I will speak." "Yes, Venerable Sir," Bhadraka the headman replied. The Blessed One said, "What do you think, headman? Are there any people in Uruvela Kappa on whose account